We conclude today chapter 49. Chapter 49 brings a conclusion to the reciprocal love that we've been speaking about since chapter 46. So it's 4 chapters on this method, this technique, on how we can bring a love and awe of God in our divine service. And it is perhaps the most important of them, of all of the methods, of the manners of how we can have a love and awe of God, because it's reciprocal. It doesn't take that much to be able to bring this into our lives. So yesterday we spoke about the Shema, the most basic prayer, Jewish prayer, of the unity and the oneness of God, that we have an awareness of, Hashem Echad, the oneness of God, and God is the only reality. And that brings us then to a love of God with all our hearts, 2 hearts. The heart that is the core of the godly soul, and the heart that is deep down in the animal soul, or the vital soul, that it too should love God. Now, how do we come to that? We explained is that when we understand, previous to the Shema, in the morning prayer service, we have 2 blessings. They're called Birchas Kriya Shema, the blessings of Shema, which seemingly they have nothing to do with this Shema, but as the Alter Rebbe explains, of course, very much so. And the first part is Yetzer Or. God is creator. He is creator of everything, and we speak in detail as God is creator, and that the creations, the spiritual part of creation, the souls above, the angels, are constantly aware of God's presence, so much so that they His holiness and constantly praising. And all of creation, including these spiritual delights, shall we say, God puts aside and creates a physical world, and us in this physical world that don't have an awareness of God, naturally at least. That's why we need Tanya to give us that awareness, or to bring out the awareness that our soul has at least. And so God, so to speak, renounces all of the spiritual, all of the things that are kind of closer to Him in a sense. And He puts that aside. As we said, the heart is, it's compressed. Love can bring a compressing of the heart, meaning putting yourself aside for another. And who's that? For us. So, the Alter Rebbe says, when we think about this and reflect upon this matter at great depth in our minds, it will lead to our hearts that we will want to reciprocate. That we too, as water reflects an image, so will our heart reflect back what God is doing for us. And that will kindle us with a burning desire in our heart, at least we're capable of this, that we should also be able to respond in a similar way of putting aside our agenda, putting aside the human condition, and incorporating in our lives a godly condition, God's condition. And what's that? That His Spirit should be part of my spirit. Meaning His Spirit, and as we explained previously, that my spirit will cleave in the spirit of godliness. How could that be? So we explain the concept of a kiss. A kiss is an exchange of breath in a physical sense, right? So it's an exchange of the spirit of one person to another. The Spirit of God in us. How so? Because when we study Torah, like we're learning now, we have the Spirit of God, which means the wisdom of God, the will of God that's in that Spirit, becomes incorporated and absorbed in my mind because I understand what I'm learning. I understand what I'm learning. And this is the idea that we say in the Shema, and V'hayu advarim ha'ela al levavcha v'dibarta bam, and these words shall be upon your heart, and you should speak of them. So, how are we going to respond in the reciprocal is that we will have our spirit study Torah in a manner that we're being absorbed in the divine light of God and speak in his words. But that is the grasping of the divine wisdom with our minds. But yet, we also need to verbalize. And the question is, why do we need to verbalize? If the idea of the Spirit of God, meaning his wisdom, now becomes my wisdom, it means I need to have an understanding of the teachings of Torah. Why do I need to verbalize it? So the Alter Rebbe explains, is because ultimately our purpose over here is to bring godliness down into this world. So godliness that is just in my mind that appreciates God, appreciates the union that I have with God, it's an achievement, but not sufficient, because that will only incorporate my mind, my godly soul, but I need to incorporate also my animal or vital soul, animal/vital soul, which is not godly, it's human. It's got a human agenda, and now I need to make it into a godly agenda. So when I verbalize, like I'm verbalizing now the words of Tanya, what I'm doing is incorporating the breath of my mouth, the lips, and all that is being animated by the vital soul, not by the godly soul. Inspired by the godly soul, but vitalized by the animal soul, the vital soul. So when I speak these words, what I'm doing now is drawing the Spirit of God, the light of God, to incorporate also my vital soul, that it too should be absorbed in the light. So what I'm doing is drawing godliness further down. And that's the ultimate purpose, is to elevate and to reveal godliness in this world. So if I'm just mindful, it's not sufficient. I need to draw it into my speech. And with this, then you can understand, when we say that these words of Torah, so we first we have the unity of God in the Shema. Then we have the love of God that brings us to. But that love of God now has to be v'dibarta bam, speak in the words of Torah. By speaking the words of Torah, then I'm bringing that love of God into my speech, into my vital soul, that it too is being absorbed in the infinite light of God. Now, all of this needs to be initiated by a giving myself over to God, giving myself over in a manner that I'm totally devoted, right? Totally devoted. Surrendering myself to Hashem, that I am here to serve. So in other words, with that notion that I'm here to serve, I have an awareness of the unity and oneness of God. Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu, Shem Echad, God is one. That brings me ve'ahavta, that I love him with all my heart. And then that will be expressed. It's not sufficient, as the Shema continues, that these things should be on your heart, but depart them and speak of them. Speak of the words of Torah, because you're bringing now the light of God, right, in that divine kiss, into not just my thoughts, not just in my godly soul, but also into my animal/vital soul. That's the idea. That's reciprocating what God has done for us, that we're ready to surrender, to give ourselves over, which, of course, a challenge, because, we all, including myself and everybody on whatever level that is, wants the world the way we want it, wants our lives the way we want it. Now, it could be, it could be a very simple materialistic, or it could be very, connected to Hashem, but yet it's still the way I want it. Surrendering means the way God wants it. And, the more think about it, the more we engage in Tanya, the more we see after time how we have grown, that before, simple things that were totally, shouldn't be part of our lives now isn't part of our lives because we've grown. But then there's more subtle things. Subtle things, like I'm doing something that is a mitzvah, but, really I'm doing it for my kind of, call it, for my self-interest. And the mitzvah becomes the excuse for my self-interest. Before, my self-interest was not a mitzvah. Now my self-interest is the mitzvah. So that's a little more subtle. That's not a surrender necessarily. That's, me using a God for what makes me comfortable, what makes me happy and brings pleasure to me. Now, obviously, that's a much greater level of achievement in a person's life when 6 months, a year ago, 5 years ago, you're having anger issues, control issues of things that were not healthy. So we've grown. And now what happens, the challenges and the battle is much more difficult, because it's within the realm of good things. But in good things doesn't mean they are not necessarily self-directed. And what we need to achieve here is that surrender, in order that we bring ourselves to doing the mitzvah in a way that is going to truly mirror and give back and reciprocate to what God is doing for us, as we've explained here. A very profound idea. This is far and above, the natural human condition, but we're all capable of it. That's the beauty. We're all capable. We just need to give some thought of what God puts aside for me. I'm ready to put aside for Him, and not make it about me, but make it about Him. Again, on every level of our growth, it's going to get trickier. It's going to become, but I'm just giving you how this applies in a personal life. That's already therapy. That's Tanya therapy, which we're going to get to. We're going to be providing that. Not just yet, but soon. We'll keep you posted. As I've mentioned, if you're interested in other things, in the other classes, private message me your email so we can put you on the email group. More stuff, good stuff to come. Of course, our weekly schedule of other teachings. All right, folks. That's it. Any questions, any comments? Let me just see if I have something here that I... Shelley from South Africa. Good morning. Lori Russ from Boca. Okay, thank you. Susan from Illinois. Boker Tov. Stephanie, also from Illinois. From Bloomington, Illinois. Good morning. Jason from Montreal is with us. And Sandy from Michigan. Good morning. Annie, thank you. Ashley with us from Texas. Heather from Connecticut. Annie, yeah, we'd like to be aware of God's presence at all times during life. Only are going to be that way. We are working in that direction. It's not all or nothing. It's about the growth, and that desire is great, but we shouldn't get down on ourselves when we're not there, when God's presence isn't with us, because we're not with Him. With that, that's who we are. That's okay. Cindy, Boker Tov to you in Florida, and Aryeh. Yes, Karen from LA. Good morning. Okay, replying to Annie is several people. Wonderful. So Denise asked, when we verbalize Torah, do we bring it out into the world as well? Absolutely. Absolutely. We reveal it out in the world. Very good. Rena Boker Tov in Colorado. Yes. Thank you, Linda. Okay, Rusty and Marla. Good morning. All right, folks. Sharing is caring. Please share the Alter Rebbe's teachings with others. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day.